Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Tuesday, May 25th meeting of the Dartmouth School Committee Equality and Diversity Subcommittee. Per Governor Baker's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A, section 20, the public will not be allowed to physically access the school committee meeting. Members of the public can access the meeting via live stream at youtube.com/DHSTV meeting. Participation procedures and will notify the public of these procedures as soon as practicable. Per open meeting law, great. I'm getting that dreaded internet connection is unstable, so I apologize. If I go in and out, just wave at me, or I don't know if I lose you here. Kathleen, if you lose me, you will go ahead and be the boss. I'm going to start off with a roll call per the online open meeting rules. So Ross Chibo. I see your
Present.
mouth. Okay.
Here, yes, here.
Mark Hayes.
Here.
Kelly Bloom.
Here.
Billy Chamberlain.
Here.
Diane Massari.
Here.
Shelley Scott.
Here.
Elizabeth Murphy.
Here.
Kathleen Amaral.
Here.
And I will call my own name, Shannon Jenkins. I'm here. Next, we have our two new members, Jada Walker.
Here.
All right. And Julina Pamphile. Is that how you say your last name?
Here. Yes.
Thank you. All right. So because we have our two new student members here, what I'd like to do is to just all maybe briefly introduce ourselves first, and then we'll have Jada and Julina introduce themselves to us. Since we missed that part. So I will start and then I'll call around. I'm Shannon Jenkins. I'm a chair of the Dartmouth School Committee. Kathleen, can you go next?
Hi, Kathleen Amaral. I am a member of the school committee and a parent to a few kiddos who have gone through Dartmouth schools to remain, I should say.
I think you know Mr. Chibo, but we'll ask him to introduce himself anyways.
I'm Mr. Chibo. I am the principal of Dartmouth High School, and I had the pleasure of meeting with each of our two student representatives. I think they'll be excellent choices for the committee.
Fabulous. Mr. Hayes.
Hello, I'm Mark Hayes, assistant principal at the middle school.
Thank you. Ms. Bloom.
Hi, I'm Kelly Bloom. I'm a social worker at the Quinn School, and I'm a parent of a couple of students in the school system.
Ms. Chamberlain.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Chamberlain. I teach Spanish. I've had the pleasure of teaching Julina, but I haven't had the pleasure of teaching Jada yet. Hopefully I will.
Fabulous. Ms. Massari.
Hi, I'm Diane Massari, 7th grade guidance counselor at Dartmouth Middle School.
Thank you. Ms. Scott.
Welcome, Jada and Julina. I am a parent of 3 kids, one that's graduated from Dartmouth High and 2 that are currently at the middle and elementary school. And I've lived in Dartmouth for about 15 years.
Thank you. Ms. Murphy.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Murphy. I am a parent of 2 students in the middle school and high school right now.
All right, so now Jada and Julina, you know all of us, so we'd like to ask you to maybe take a minute or two and just introduce yourselves to the rest of the committee. So Jada, can I have you go first, please?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Jada. I'm 17. I'm a junior at Dartmouth High School, and I'm excited to be here, so thank you for having me.
Welcome, we're excited to have you. Julina.
Hi, I'm Julina Pamphile. I'm 17 as well, and I'm a junior at Dartmouth High School, and I'm very grateful to be here.
Awesome, thank you so much. So first I want to apologize to all of you. I'm a little bit, even though I've been on the school committee for a while, I'm a little bit rookie at running subcommittees. So I've forgotten some of the routines and such that come with complying with open meeting law. So we were supposed to meet last week, but I forgot to ask for the meeting to be posted. And we cannot meet unless the meeting has been posted. So we're meeting tonight. I apologize for that. I also apologize that I forgot to put approval of the minutes from last meeting on this agenda. Dr. Gifford did take excellent minutes, but since that's not on the agenda, we will not be approving those minutes. I will send those around for you. And Ms. Amaral has agreed to be my backup to see all those things that I have missed, because I'm apparently missing a lot at this point in our pandemic school year. But I did remember we did manage, with the help of Ms. Genther, to get the agenda posted. And one of the things we had talked about at our last meeting was people wanted to know some of the things that the schools are already doing around diversity. And so I asked Dr. Gifford to put something together, and she has invited Miss Oliveira, but I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Gifford first to introduce Miss Oliveira in the presentation, and we can get started and then ask questions about that. So Dr. Gifford.
Great, thank you. So exactly, Miss Oliveira is our Director of Teaching and Learning, and with that role, because she, comes a lot of responsibilities to see what our curriculum is using, the textbooks or extra reading books, how our libraries are equipped with various books. And I have to say, we've done I think, and we'll hear from the group as time goes on, but a nice job of adding various selections to our libraries, our school libraries in the elementary school as well, bringing forth the ideas about different cultures, et cetera. But we do a lot more than that. So Ms. Oliveira did give a presentation to the school committee at a recent meeting. So we thought we would be able to bring that forth tonight and talk about some of the things that we feel the school district is doing to address some of the issues that we might be talking about as time goes forth. So Ms. Oliveira?
Tracy, we need you to unmute. Sorry.
She usually does that very well.
I know. It's been a long year for everyone. I know.
Yeah. There she goes.
Thank you, Ms. Oliveira.
Sorry about that. It has been a long year, so I am unmuted, I believe now, correct?
Yes, you are.
And I am sharing my screen. You can see the presentation?
We can.
All right, perfect. So once again, my name is Tracy Oliveira, and I'm the Director of Teaching and Learning for the district. And I am here to present, I kind of framed it around being culturally responsive education. So thinking about what are we doing in our classrooms. And I just want to highlight by saying at first, this is certainly not inclusive of everything that we are doing, but I was trying to truly just highlight the big stuff that we're doing, and also look at where we're trying to make some changes and where we're trying to do better and increase what we're doing around diversity in our classrooms. So this presentation is broken up into two pieces. Like I said, one currently what we're doing, and one increasing our work around diversity and trying to bring more opportunities for our students to experience in our classrooms. So I titled this culturally responsive education. And if you think, we had to stop and think, what do culturally responsive schools and classrooms look like? And we kind of wanted to establish that kind of shared vision around all of our schools. So we want our schools and classroom environments not only to be equitable and bias-free, but also reflect students and their cultural identities in order to foster feelings of safety, belonging, engagement, and motivation. We want all of our students to feel safe at our schools. And we're looking at that. It's critical to recognize that the goal of educators is to have knowledge and capacity to serve all of our students well. And in order to be highly effective educators, we must develop authentic understanding of students and adults that are in our communities. We must also ensure that students' experiences in schools are affirming to who they are and what they bring to the school community, and unpack our own cultural impacts and our worldviews and approaches. So we're trying to strive to validate students' experiences as well as their values, include curricula that celebrates all community members, and actively reflect on our curriculum to ensure that we're reinforcing ideas that celebrate members, and also reinforcing those ideas that celebrate all members of our community and empowering all students. So once again, I am the Director of Teaching and Learning, so curriculum is key. to what we do. And we want to make sure that all of our curriculum, the whole package of our encompasses all of our learning goals and standards. So units and lessons that lay out what teachers teach each day and each week, assignments and activities and projects that are given to students, and also includes the books, materials, videos, readings, everything that's used in class. We want all of that curriculum to be a key component of a culturally responsive teaching. And we want that to be filled with stories, activities, assignments, and illustrations that influence how young people understand the world and contribute to all of our cultures and values. So one interesting thing that DESE came up with a couple of years ago, it was actually 2018, time goes by quite quickly, but was the history and social studies frameworks. And they really built them on 3 pillars. And it was about the standards for history and social studies, the literacy standards, and content standards. But what they certainly did home in on was civics choices and how students should assume responsibilities for strengthening equality and justice and liberty across the United States. And so it's really helped us, especially here in Dartmouth, to kind of pull in a lot of a civics education from K to 12, because the standards were featured to design help students develop skills to participate and lead society and to be more culturally diverse. And one great thing that they did was our 8th graders will be experiencing a civics project, and it's a homegrown civics project. So it's something that they feel they need to go out and do for our community. And it's completely student run. So it's kind of tough for teachers because they were always thinking, you know, they set the stage and they kind of try to plan for things, but it kind of can't be done because it's all the ownership is on the students to come up with what they want to change, what they want to do, and where they want to go with the project. So when we look at our standards, especially for social studies and health and our social emotional learning, this is just a Wordle where it really talks about all of the words in there that help for our diversity and civics learning. It's filled throughout, and we try not to look at these as being very separate issues that we need to kind of look at, but kind of fill them in with what we do each and every day. We want it to be centered around culturally responsive education, but also feel like it's part of what we are doing. Social emotional learning is something that we have played an impact in, and we've played a big part about for the last couple of years. So here's just some examples of some of the things that have been real highlights in Dartmouth. Some of our initiatives of You Matter, I Matter, and Kindness Matters, which has taken over the last 3 years. Of making everybody feel inclusive and part of our community. Our Second Steps program, which is a K to 5 program, and we're looking to bring it into the middle school this year, really talks about getting along and including everybody. PBIS, buddy benches, and of course our Unified Sports, which is just a great program in Dartmouth that kind of highlights all of what we are doing. Whoops. One thing I just want to highlight that we've talked about with staff members across the district is this idea of windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. So I'm just going to play for you this video here where it talks about kind of where we get that from. This comes from Reading Rockets, and it just pulls in when we think about the books and our literacy standards of what we want to give to students each and every day. This is something that helps frame our thinking of what we want our students to experience. So I'm just going to, it's only about a minute. And
we need diverse books because we need books in which children can find themselves, see reflections of themselves. I wrote a piece, maybe in 1990 it was published, which I called Mirrors, Windows, and Sliding Glass Doors. And I think that's really why children need to see themselves reflected, but books can also be windows, and so you can look through and see other worlds and see how they match up or don't match up to your own. But the sliding glass door allows you to enter that world as well, and so that's the reason that the diversity needs to go both ways. And it's not just children who have been underrepresented and marginalized, who need these books. It's also the children who always find their mirrors in the books and therefore get an exaggerated sense of their own self-worth and a false sense of what the world is like, because it's becoming more and more colorful and diverse as time goes on. So I think that's why.
So as we stopped and we looked at our literacy standards, and as you know, a big push that we do is getting authentic literature into students' hands from our preschool classrooms right up into our high school classrooms. We really tried this year, even amongst the pandemic, of truly getting books that include the windows, the mirrors, and the sliding glass doors. So we want students to see themselves, to see people who are different, and then also to kind of have that sliding glass door feeling where they can go in and kind of have a chance to experience what it might look like. So in elementary ELA, we use units of study from Teachers College at Columbia University to teach reading, writing, and phonics. And an interesting thing is in 2019, Columbia University began a re-examination of their curriculum to emphasize the importance of this cultural responsive classroom. So their work to achieve equality and inclusion is forefront in what they do. They've done a ton of supplemental read alouds, and as you can see in front of you, some of the books that they've included in the diverse text that within our reading and writing workshop in all of our classrooms. If we go on to the middle school, we've tried to increase the diverse text. Many of the stories and novels here in the 6th grade deal with issues like bullying, the treatment of others based on social and cultural and economic class. They read The Bridge Home, which focuses on a group of homeless children in the streets of Cheyenne, and A Long Walk to the Water by Linda Sue Parks, which tells the story of conflict in South Sudan, and The Quest to Bring Water to a Small African Village. In 7th grade, the conflicts of class, distinction, self-worth, and cultural bias go deeper with the exploration of stories like Thank You, Ma'am by Langston Hughes and The Scholarship Jacket by Martha Simmons. And on our 8th grade ELA adds a layer of complexity by challenging the trustworthiness of sources such as The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe, a novel studies featuring a wide range of authors. And they explore author backgrounds and how these backgrounds affect the voice and style of their writing. 8th graders finished their year with an in-depth study of argument, analyzing the speech, What the Slave Is in the 4th of July by Frederick Douglass. At our high school, starting last year, last year, they rearranged the literacy readings for all classes, and Dartmouth High School eliminated the structure of classes around American and British literature, and they moved to a more thematic system, which allows for the increase of more voices in reading. And hopefully we're hoping to get more engaged readers as part of this shift. Each grade level, a novel has a play added that has diversity in mind. So in 9th grade, they read Dear Martin by Nick Stone. 9th and 10th grade have been exposed in their English classes to Ava DuVary's 13th, a great documentary about the Black incarceration in America. In grade 11, Power Authority by Toni Morrison. And grade 12, they do Identity Less by Andrew Sean Greer. So once again, this year, we were always growing and always trying to add some diversity to around what we are doing. This was 2 years ago, but it's worth noting that the DEF grant celebration of self-DeMello diversity. So DeMello School established a diversity library thanks to the DEF grant, which was used by both students and educators. Their goal was to create a portrait wall at the entrance of the building where family pictures were going to be displayed. I think that the pandemic put a little bit of a stop to some of this work, but they still hope to pick it up and move on next year when we're all in person. The other thing that the pandemic kind of put a stop to, but Adolph Brown was supposed to be our keynote speaker this year for our back to school PD day in September. But since we couldn't meet in person, we really felt like it wasn't worth seeing him virtually, because the power of his presentation is really seeing him speak and letting those words of his presentation and his actions on stage kind of seep in. So he will be coming this year in October for our staff, and he really talks about, he calls it real talk and implicit bias and what our actions really mean, and the staff will really have a great PD centered around that. We spent some time last year really increasing the diversity text in our libraries. So we gave all of our elementary school libraries, our middle school library, and our high school library media specialists some monies, and they went out and found lots of great text to do that windows, sliding glass doors, and mirrors to increase their collections. The AP English course, Mr. Higgins switched it up a little bit so that all 80 English language competition students read the book Tina Coates by Tina Coates, Between the World and Me. And it's a lengthy letter written by a Black journalist to his son. And this was the first time that class had kind of did a book study on that book. And in our elementary schools, if I go back to it, here are just a few samples of books that we've kind of pulled in more in our social studies curriculum. So talking about refugees, migrations, and even looking at holidays and why we have different holidays in our countries and what we celebrate. The middle school, once again, added some more books around diversity in their book clubs, reading Refugee and Ghost Boys. This year coming up, and parents have already gotten this information, elementary grade level teachers, which we call our CIA team, our curriculum instruction and assessment team of teachers, reviewed our summer reading choices, and they really dove in to find books at each grade level, but that include more diverse characters in the titles for this year. So we were really happy that we got a chance to kind of take a peek at that and really look at providing opportunities for more diverse reading for our students. And that about closes it up. I'm going to turn it over to questions, but I'm just going to stop sharing my screen because I had to do that presentation without seeing anyone, which I always find a little difficult without looking at body language.
Thank you, Ms. Oliveira. Yeah, it can be hard. I try not to share screens because then you only see a few faces.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions or comments for Ms. Oliveira or Dr. Gifford about that presentation, about other issues the schools are working on right now? Jada, go right ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Jada. Sorry.
That's okay. So from my understanding, a lot of the I'm going to say diversity points come from the library, like investing in books and stuff. But I think that's tricky because I know, at least as my experience as a teenager, like going to the library and picking books is not something I choose to do on my own time. Like if that makes sense. And I can't assume many other teenagers do that too, like on top of like schoolwork in general. So like, do you think there's like a way maybe to work around that? Because I feel like there's a lot of investment and diversity into the library, but not a lot of students actually utilize that.
So that's a great question. And first of all, we should always take time to read. I certainly understand high school students don't have time to read. But what we've done in a lot of like what we did in our AP Comp and a lot of the classrooms is we adding the books into our curriculum. So even though we've increased the titles within our libraries, a lot of the books that you saw were books that were added into our curriculum. So books that you would be, I don't want to say required to read, but part of the curriculum that everybody was reading. And also a big push that we're trying to do, and I think we've done a really good job of it, is adding what we call voice and choice for students. So they have a lot more voice in what books they want to read. So instead of saying the whole class is going to read this book, we say this is what we're trying to learn. So the skill we're trying to learn, but also here are some books you can choose to read that will still get you practicing that skill and talking about that skill. So those are a couple of things that we've done to increase the reading and choices for students. But you do make a great point. I understand kids don't go not everyone goes to the library. So that's why I'm saying trying to pull it into our standards and what we do in our documented curriculum.
Yeah, thank you.
I'd love to follow up on that question. I was on a seminar about higher education recently, and I heard one of the speakers, he was fabulous, was talking about how this needs to be sort of a lens for our whole curriculum. And he gave the example, I can't remember his last name now, but I remember his first name was Jose. And he talked about how he went through his entire, K through 12 education, and there was never like a word or a math or a science problem that used Jose as an example of the story that was being told. So in addition to thinking about, right, the integrating sort of diverse books into our English curriculum, our history curriculum, to what extent do we use diversity metrics to evaluate the other curriculum materials that we use? I mean, I'm looking at Mr. Hayes because I knew he used to be a math teacher, right? Math uses a lot of word problems. Do we evaluate textbooks with some diversity metrics looking at that? To what extent is that part of the district's plan when we purchase those materials?
So we do have a textbook adoption policy, and we have a rubric for it, and it does have that. But one thing we're looking at doing, and hopefully we will get it rolled out for September, is to train more teachers on looking at that. Because my major kind of thoughts in a way is we give out curriculum and we have our basic textbooks and stuff, but it's also all the supplemental material that comes in, and plays a much bigger part in what students are exposed to and opportunities that students have, which is why I was really happy with seeing the mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors philosophy, because I think it just helps people to wrap their head around it. So after Adolph Brown comes and we kind of do a little bit more PD around that, we're going to be rolling out a supplemental material policy, which will have a rubric, which will hopefully get our teachers thinking more about, the name, exactly what you're saying, the Jose's, the names, the places, the thoughts, what we're putting in kids' hands. In a true confession, when we looked at our elementary summer reading books, I just happened to be looking at them, and I was pretty shocked, to be honest with you, about how many were white male characters in our books. And we immediately put it out, and I said, let's switch this up. And I just left it out to like I said, that team. And I said, thinking back at our windows, that kind of sliding glass doors again. And the books that we came back with were much better. We're richer, we're more inclusive, we're more diverse. And I have to be honest, it, has a reflection on me. When I looked at it, I was kind of like, wow, someone should have called this out in a way or looked at it again. So I think we have a much better options now for our students, which is going back to what Jada said. It's another opportunity for students to have those choices where it's built into the curriculum. They don't have to go to the library and get it. And it's a nice chance for parents to see it too, because we put that flyer out for parents to look at all the grade level choices.
So I just want to say, I appreciate your comment about reflecting on how we haven't been doing well, but we're trying to do better. Because I think one of the important things here too, as we work together and try to create a better, more welcoming atmosphere, is we have to be willing to acknowledge our shortcomings and just do better, right? We can't change the past, but we can change the future. So I definitely appreciate you acknowledging that and that sort of effort that we're making. Other questions from people here? Ms. Scott.
Thank you, Ms. Oliveira, for that presentation. I haven't read all those books, and so I hope you'll help me a little bit. I wanted to ask if things like Native peoples, differently abled folks, and GLBTQI communities are represented in those materials as well. I couldn't tell by the titles, and I'm not familiar with all of them, so I'm just wondering what the breadth of the diversity is, I guess, like the visible and invisible diversity.
So I'm going to go back to the slide with the flower, and it says we're growing. I think after to be honest, after the George Floyd incident, we really went out with our library media specialists who really have a good handle on these books, and they went and picked a lot of books. And we said to them, same thing, we want to try to really increase our collection. So I was just looking at that a couple of days ago. I can't think of explicit titles, to be honest with you, but yes, we're extremely mindful of making sure we include all the protected classes, if we want to say, and make sure that they have representation in our literature that we have available for students.
Thank you. I had one other question, but I'll wait if someone else wants to raise their hand.
No, why don't you go ahead and then we'll open it up to someone else if they need to. Go ahead, Ms. Scott.
All right. I was also wondering about, in addition to reading, if there were activities, and I know that's part of the curriculum and that there are different things that are happening, that teachers are approaching it in different ways. But there are, like, one of the most basic examples I can think of as not a teacher would be like a debate team or opportunities in social studies class to debate, so that as topics come up, the students can sort of get a little bit passionate about something. And at first it may not be diversity issues. It may be, what Doritos flavor is the best Doritos flavor, but eventually, we can engage them in things that are more diverse than that. So I was wondering, are we doing anything, or are we doing enough in your opinion in that way? Or are there other ways that we can be improving as we move forward?
So I think we can always be improving as we move forward. And I think sometimes if I go back to the summer reading choices, it's things that were intentional in a way, but we just have to be reflective and look at things differently. We've done a lot. And I sometimes think that parents out there probably, I don't want my name out there because there's probably a lot of pets that have been bought over the last few years in elementary schools, because we do teach persuasive writing, and we have kids come up with, what do you want? What do you want? And what do you want? What are you passionate about? And what do you want to do? And so we've had a lot of kids write great persuasive essays to get pets. And then we get the parents writing, I just had to go buy a dog because it was so good. And or we had a group of students at the middle school, this is going back a couple of years, but changed styrofoam trays because they felt it wasn't good for the landfill. So we do teach that, and we move up for it. We move up across the grade levels for our persuasive writing. And I think the 8th grade civics project is another great example of that, of giving students ownership and making a change and saying that they can really make a difference in this world. And the other part I really like about it, what Desi came up with, it's a collaborative thing. So kids have to work together to make that change. So we're teaching a lot of those skills in there.
Thank you.
Dr. Gifford, you wanted to add something along that line?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say that, and I wanted the principals to speak. We have Mr. Chibo as well as Mr. Hayes, but also our teachers are here that certainly include various projects in their curriculum, but can speak to some of those things to enlighten everyone here what's going on. And I'm sure our students can speak about either things that we're doing or things that we might be able to do. But I just wanted to mention a couple of things, maybe small, but I think it speaks volumes for what the district is trying to do about being inclusive. And I think about our buddy benches that we have at our schools. Our unified athletic program is humongous, if you will. The attention it gets, the support it gets, the peers that cooperate and collaborate with our students with special needs, the programs that we run. I just think that it's our basic philosophy and our core belief and our true north, if you will. And I would say that anyone here, our teachers as well as our administrators, would be able to speak to our emphasis on that throughout the last few years about really promoting the rights of everyone, the inclusiveness of everyone, and LGBTQ, whatever it might be. We are here to support all of those students. And again, we have a social worker here, we have folks, and again, we might be able to increase and enhance what we're doing, but I would welcome any of their voices here on things that they're thinking about that our schools promote. And I see Mr. Chibo's hand up, so.
Go ahead, Mr. Chibo.
Thank you. So I just wanted to say a few things, actually. So to Ms. Scott's point about do they, students get to debate and different things like that, I will share that our advanced placement program this year, the research, in particular, the research course, there were a number of student presentations, students who did, unique research into areas, they get to choose their topics that they conducted the research and then put together a 15 to 20 minute presentation on. In fact, Jelena, one of the reasons Jelena was recommended for this committee was her AP presentation around issues of equality and the use of Indigenous people as a school mascot. So we have, and she was just, that was one presentation. There were others of our AP students who did presentations around that topic. I'm thinking of another one was around looking at issues of, gender inequity in STEM related fields. So there's a lot of these presentations and a lot of these different projects that our students are very much engaged in, which I think is, it's just so, it's inspiring because it shows the degree to which our students are passionate about making the world a better place, which I think is great. So that's one thing. I want to circle back to Jada's point around reading, and certainly, I understand her point about the library, and I think our advisory program is an area that we could certainly look to do more around the issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion. One of the strands of our advisory program, which is fledgling, it's only in its second year. So it's really, we viewed the advisory program as a 4-year build. And unfortunately, the pandemic hit when it did. So that's made advisory a little bit tricky this year. But one of the overarching strands of our advisory program is community building. And so what better way to build community than to interweave issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion into that program and have really meaningful discussions with our teenagers, with our students at the high school level. Also, our English department this year identified kind of different social justice topics that aligned with their curriculum at different points, so that they could interweave that discussion around the texts that they were reading at the time. So whether that was food scarcity or whether it was, issues of race relations, or, it was a different topic, depending on what they were reading at the time. So there are a number of areas, and certainly the other thing I would say to Dr. Jenkins' point, and I don't even think necessarily that it's a matter of bad or good with how we're doing, but it's a matter of continuous improvement and looking to continuously, improve how things are doing and to continuously build a community that is more equitable, and celebrates the diversity and includes all, I think, is our goal. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chibo. I would add to that, I'm glad to see we're doing some professional development in the fall around this issue, because it's not just about giving people tools, it's about, teaching people how to do this sort of properly. Talking about issues of injustice, race, gender inequality, sexual orientation, gender identity can be difficult conversations. And people need to know how to use those tools. And so it's about sort of both of those things happening hand in hand, so that the conversations that we have are meaningful, right? And so I'm glad to see we're both, working on the curriculum and the professional development around that, because I think both of those things are really important. Other questions or comments? Okay, so Julina first, and then Elizabeth second.
I agree with Mr. Tigo about AP research. A lot of kids did go out their way to talk about racial situation as well, gender. I know Colin Zhu, he talked about during his research about the different gender that is dealing with AP courses, because many females are most likely to do AP than male, and he realized that he was less than many kids who were doing AP. So that was an interesting topic to bring up as well, about identity during those type of situations. As well, going back to the I feel like, I don't know if you guys ever considered it or ever done this before. Maybe having like this, similar to like college fairs, like having sections of like those books that they picked out and like intriguing the kids. I remember when I was in middle school, I used to have book fairs and wanted to like buy books and all those type of stuff. So maybe this educating kids on the book instead of them reading it for themselves, because many teenagers aren't really reading it. They're just picking it just because they have to pick it. So maybe for like the close end of the year, maybe we can do something similar to that. Maybe virtually, or maybe something
I don't
we
know if it's
can
me
do
or if it's
after COVID, or slate into the newsletter as well.
Julina, you're breaking up a little bit, and I don't know if that's me. Or
Did you hear any?
I got most of it, but towards the end, I think you were breaking up just a little bit. But I think we got some of the stuff in the presentations.
Oh, okay.
And then you're talking about maybe ways to introduce this to students rather than waiting for them to come in. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Those are-
like book fairs.
Right. Those are great ideas. All right. Ms. Oliveira, did you want to respond to that? I know Ms. Murphy had a question or comment too. Was that?
No, I think, yes, I think that's a great idea about we have books that we want kids to read. I know a lot of teachers, and maybe this is something we can put out there to do more about diversity. They do what we call book buffets, and they set up just actually a buffet table of books, and kids can come and look at them and talk about them and kind of then pick what they like. And we can maybe do, you know, something centered around diversity and a diverse book buffet, if you may. I don't know if that makes sense, but do something like that. So that is something that, you know, a little tweak that we could probably easily do. Our teachers are very creative about going about things like that. So something we can work on probably pretty quickly.
Ms. Murphy?
Thanks. Yeah, to build on that quickly, I would just say that having looked at the high school summer reading list that came out already last week, that was, to me, was an example. Like, there were so many choices. I think there were over 60 books. But also it really looked like a pretty diverse mix without being explicitly saying these are our diverse selections. They were just in the mix, and the categories were actually, you know, nonfiction, memoir, fiction, young adult, etc. But there were definitely, I assume, a conscious decision made in how those shaped, because it did show a variety of perspectives, which looks great. The question I had kind of actually ties a little bit some of the other comments. I'm wondering though, I love hearing about when we talk about all the kindness and the buddy benches and the different things over the years, particularly at the younger levels. I wonder how we're connecting from elementary through high school and AP in terms of, I think we know that not the majority of students are taking those AP classes. So if that's where a lot of this really deeper stuff is going, what's happening at the middle school level? How are we particularly taking all this focus on kindness and inclusion, and also tying that explicitly to diversity, right? And diversity of all shapes and sizes, not just cultural. I believe in the work that I do, especially, it comes out a lot, you know, kindness is wonderful and super important, but we also have to learn how to be kind when we disagree with people. And sometimes there is a tendency to focus our efforts on kindness on the things that it's easy for everyone to agree upon, and we know what's right and what's wrong. And I think sometimes we have to start to kind of push things a little bit further when it comes to teaching these younger or early adolescent kids what it looks like to disagree but still be kind, and giving them ways of modeling that type of thing. So I'm wondering how we're doing professional development and maybe looking towards things for the future where we're not just presenting this book and its perspective, but also helping kids to see and learn to discuss different things and stuff like that in an environment where they can have structure and guidance, you know, sort of like debate, but also be learning that there is a way to think differently and also think critically and learn from others' perspectives instead of just be exposed.
Hello. So and anyone can chime in on that if you'd like, but I think, as a part of what we have going, I do think in general, this is an area where we are growing at the middle school and where we need to continue to grow. The debate process is something, as our age ranges, it can be a little bit sensitive, a little bit fragile in our viewpoints. We do with eighth graders, they work on debate in their social studies classes, as well as, as we move to the new civics standards and the civics project, the alternating viewpoints, will be a part of that. And I think, just in general, we're probably a little bit closer to the elementary school model of teaching kindness and teaching empathy, because we're a little bit closer to that age and kind of growing out of that as our students progress through the middle school. And it's really about developing an environment of inclusivity. We have a number of students who are really in a stage of trying to understand where they fit, how to be included if they don't necessarily feel so. And so I think in this case, and this is kind of some of, hearing about, having Adolph Brown, who I'm a little bit familiar with, I think it's a huge step in the right direction for our, building staff who, will then lead our students to be more inclusive. I think, the understanding's got to start at the top and work its way down to our students. So I think that's a big area of growth for us. I think we have opportunities to do wonderful things. And as we get trained more, as our building staff gets trained more, I think we can really help our students along in creating an inclusive environment for themselves and for their peers.
Something that Elizabeth said just got me thinking about that transition from the message of kindness to sort of that deeper thinking, right? Because, being anti-racist and focusing on social justice, sometimes I don't mean we want to be unkind to people that we disagree with, but individual behavior and systems of oppression, right, don't change systems. And so it's like moving that step beyond kindness, right? That being truly committed to social justice, to being anti-racist, requires more action than that. And I don't think they're necessarily quite ready for that at middle school, but I think that's what you're getting, right? That if we're going to make, and Elizabeth, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I was thinking that as you're saying this, that kindness is a start, but right, as we develop, we need more than that, right? We need some behaviors to disrupt the status quo and to challenge, right, sort of conventional ways of doing things because of sort of some inherent problems built into those structures. I don't think that's going to happen in the middle school, to Mr. Hayes's point, right? I'm not sure developmentally ready for that, but I think it's also important, right, to help kids make that transition, right? I don't know if that makes sense or if that was, but it made me think of that when you were saying that, Elizabeth, right? That we've got to get them to that next step as well. Other questions or comments? I think I see today, we appreciate this presentation. It's the start of the conversation and the start of sort of learning what we're doing. I think as we go, we might start to, and I've already started jotting notes and developing lists. We might start thinking about, well, what are the other things that we want to learn about? And what are the other things that we might want information from the schools about? I think we got a nice presentation about like curriculum today, and I think that was good. A couple of the things that came to my mind that I sort of wrote down to think about, and again, I don't want to say we all need this by, next week or whatever, but as we keep continuing our work, what are the policies, right, around official policies around that invoke diversity? Like, how do we select texts, right? Tracy, you talked about, we're developing about policies about supplemental materials. We need to think about this in other areas too, our hiring, right? Our professional development, all of that sort of stuff. So I think at some point we may want to look at some of the policies that we already have around this. One of the things that also struck me, I think maybe Ms. Chamberlain asked this at our last meeting. I think you asked a question maybe about what other languages are spoken in our school. Am I right about that, Lily? Yeah. And that sort of falls under the umbrella to me. Well, what data are we collecting around diversity? Because I'm doing a summer reading on this campus. It's about using data to move from an equity talk to an equity walk. And the idea is if we're not measuring things, we don't know that we need to improve them, right? So what sort of data are we collecting around diversity? One of the things that I know our faculty did on campus was we started looking at some of the rates of police interaction and disciplinary procedures by race. And there were huge disparities, which may not be surprising, but I also think it was surprising to a lot of people because we'd never looked at that data that way. So, we have some idea of curriculum now, but I'm thinking, some policies are things we need to learn about. And also, what data do we collect and where do we want to be collecting data are some things that we might want to know more about as a committee. I guess I might ask you all as we sort of wrap up the presentation part, and again, this is not necessarily for next week or next meeting, but long-term, this sort of list of things we might want to go to. Are there other things that you think you might want to learn more about from the administration, the schools around these issues? Jada, you have your hand up. Go right ahead.
So I made some notes before the meeting started. And I think my biggest point is like building allyship, because at least my experience in the Dartmouth Public Schools is everybody is predominantly white, whether it be the staff and the student body. And I know the student body is out of your hands, but like, especially the staff, like if I had someone who was out, like looked like me, maybe in middle school, like I would have worn my hair curly earlier and stuff like that. I wouldn't have felt like ashamed of those things because I never really had a person who looked like me. I think there was 2 other Black girls in my grade growing up. I think that just shows how white Dartmouth is, not only as like a school system, but as a community. And I think we need to focus on building allyship because we're building like a lot of programs that promote diversity where people can learn about other cultures. But I don't think individuals are learning how to support them, if that makes sense.
It does, absolutely. And I think, one of the things that we did talk about last meeting was perhaps maybe next fall, one of the things that we're doing on our campus, but might be good in the schools, is doing a climate survey, both about how people experience being in our schools around issues of diversity, both for the people who work here and, for the students where sort of age appropriate, because I think that helps us also think about where we're not doing well and where we can do better. I think allyship is a big one, but I think there's lots of, probably we might find others in doing that climate survey. Other comments, questions, suggestions? Ms. Oliveira.
So I'm just going to put out there that I felt as we were putting together the presentation on curriculum that I did sell a lot of things short. So I know the school adjustment counselors, the guidance counselors, I don't want to speak for Mrs. Massari and Mr. Bloom, but they do an awful lot of work around this. I did not even touch upon our second step program and what they bring in. So I don't know how to guilt or anything, but I kind of sold that part of it a little bit short, the great work that they do around this. So.
Yeah, and I do want to say that was really a presentation about curriculum, right? And so that's like I'm saying, like maybe in a meeting or two, we might have a presentation about policies, right? And maybe in a couple of months, we might have a presentation about data. So yeah, I think that's a very valid point, and I think it's important to emphasize that it's not everything, and that also might be a good presentation to have from guidance, both at, the high school and the middle school, to talk about the work that our guidance counselors and our social workers are doing around diversity. because they interact so closely with our students. So that might be something that we add to that list. I feel like we're going to have a process of information gathering, right? And so there's lots of people I think that we might want to hear from over our next set of meetings. So we've got some things about policy, maybe looking at data, maybe looking at guidance and social work. Mr. Chibo, you have your hand up. Go right ahead.
So I don't want to, I'm hesitant to bring it up, but I do think it's the elephant in the room. The mascot was an issue that came up at our first meeting.
Yes, we're going to come back to that. Can I put you on hold on that one?
Absolutely, sure.
Because okay, so here's what I want to do. We're getting into a little bit of then looking at our agenda. We had the presentation. The second thing on our agenda was the review of the charge, and then the last thing on our agenda is the continued discussion of what our priorities are. So I think I'd like to come back to the mascot issue, if it's okay with you, Mr. Chibo, under item 3. Would that work?
Absolutely.
Okay, so if we're done sort of with, does anybody have any other questions for Ms. Oliveira or Dr. Gifford about that presentation? All right, so let's take a quick look. Last time I had circulated, we had talked in the meeting about the charge. I'm not really sure that there's any changes that we want to make to the charge at this moment, but because of open meeting law, right, I had to show it to you last time, and now is really when we can discuss it. And so this charge that I sent via email to you, I have all sorts of notes here, so I'm trying to find it myself. I sent via email to you all. I think, we don't have to change it now. We can always go back to the school committee if we want to change it. But I'm wondering if anyone saw anything here that they thought, they would want to change, anything they thought was missing, anything they would add. We can always keep it as it is for now and come back to it later. But since we did bring it up at last meeting, I wanted to give anyone a chance to provide any input on that charge now. So does anybody have any thoughts about that charge? I think it's pretty broad. I think it allows us to do a lot of different things. But again, if we're going to make changes to it, we need to do it in an open discussion, in an open meeting with all of you. So if everyone's okay with that for now we can come back around to that issue that Mr. Chibo brought up. And let me say a couple of things. One, I see as we go along, right, we're all starting to get to know each other. We're all learning. And so we may be collecting some data with a presentation from Ms. Oliveira. We might learn about policies. Like maybe every meeting we're having a little bit of a presentation for someone that teaches us and we learn some things about different aspects of what the school is doing. But at the same point in time, right, we were convened to do some work, and one of the issues that the school committee, right, wanted our committee to look at was the mascot. Mr. Chibo, now I will open it up and bring it back to you for any comments you wanted to make around that. Sorry to put you off.
No worries at all. Thank you. I was going to say kind of a little bit of what you just said, which is that I just want to make sure that, because we could have people report to us all day, every day. I mean, there's a lot of work around diversity, equality, and inclusion. And so I think it would be easy to get lost in just continuously having folks, come to present to us. And, being someone who often has to present, I appreciate that Tracy has had a full day already today. And so has Dr. Gifford and everyone really on the committee. But I guess my point is, I just wanted to make sure that we both have any kind of presentation, but also realize that, I don't think any work this committee can do will move us forward if we don't honestly and authentically address the issue of the mascot. And so I just want to make sure that doesn't get put to the back burner. That was all.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mr. Chibo. And, we had some conversations about a bunch of different things our last meeting, but I was going to say, sort of as a member, not necessarily as the chair of this committee, when we as a school committee talked about convening this committee, the mascot issue was central to the convening of this committee. But we also wanted to make clear that wasn't the only thing this committee can do. But I think it was central. And for that reason, I I would argue that I would like for us to tackle that issue first, because I think it's a conversation that many people want to have right now. And there's other things, right? We can continue to do presentations and do climate surveys and work on other really important issues, like Jada brought up allyship and how do we cultivate that. That work will be ongoing, but I do think we should tackle that mascot issue. To that end, I want to share with you, I received a number of sort of different emails and inputs. I'm sure some of you may have, but I have as well. So I want to just let you know a few things. First, the chair of the Dartmouth Democratic Town Committee, Jim Griffith, emailed me and said that he recommended the Dartmouth Committee, Democratic Town Committee recommended an open and public hearing on the matter. And they volunteered to host that forum. I have not yet responded to him because it's not my job. It's our job as a committee to chair this. My inclination would be to say to Mr. Griffith, I agree with you. We should have an open forum on this. But I believe that the committee should organize that forum. And it may be more than one forum. I don't believe that we should have a political party hosting that forum. But that's not my decision to make. So I wanted to consult with you before I responded to him to hear your thoughts about that offer that was extended to us as a committee. Any thoughts? Ms. Chamberlain?
Personally, I feel like we're a ways off from being ready for a meeting like that.
Yeah.
I think that we want to be very well prepared and have lots of information at hand before we would consider something like that. But I agree with you that I think it's something we should organize ourselves and, publicize ourselves. But that was nice of them to offer.
Very nice. I agree. I don't think we're ready to have that yet. But I haven't responded to him yet. So I do want to say, yes, I think it seems everyone's nodding. Yes, we do want to have some sort of forum, but when we do it, it's going to be us hosting it. Does that seem about right for everyone? Okay, email number 2 that I want to share with you. I also received an email from Kempton Campbell, who is an alumni of the Dartmouth schools and who is now chair of the town's youth commission. He has been doing a directed reading or a study project about Native American mascots while he's been at college this spring. And he offered to make a presentation to us. And then email number 3, I have an email from Miss Laurel Davis Delano, who participated in an NAACP forum about the mascot, who also offered to help for us to arrange to have some Native American speakers come speak to us about the issue. So I'm raising that because I'm wondering how we want to tackle this. Do we want to do our own research first? Do we want to have people come present us research? How would the committee prefer to tackle that? Because I think maybe, Ms. Chamberlain, your point may be we need to learn some about the issue before we do an open forum on that issue. Would that be fair to say? Okay, Julina and then I think Jada both had their hands up. So go ahead, please share your thoughts.
Can you hear me? This making sure.
I can, yes, thank you.
I agree with Ms. Chamberlain for us educating ourselves first before going into it without knowing and then being rampaged by information that we didn't know about. I feel like we should educate ourselves as well, be educated by the Native Americans that would talk to us about it to have an understanding of their perspective. So we can have our own background, but their background as well. So I feel like we should do both at the same time. I don't feel like we should just go into listening.
We lost you, Julina, sorry. Julina, we lost you there at the end, so we didn't hear. We got the point that we think that we should do some education first. We might perhaps ask, Mr. Chibo had some great things to say about your AP project, so perhaps you might be willing to share some of that information with us. We could have Mr. Campbell share some information perhaps as well based on his research. And I do know Miss Delano also does her scholarly research is in this area as well. So we might do that. Jada, you wanted to add something to your comments.
Yeah, I was gonna kind of say the same thing as Julina. I think we need to educate ourselves because I think it's wrong to set the indigenous peoples to educate us. But I think it's so important to have their representation here when talking about indigenous issues. Because I think it's kind of wrong for us to just speak over their voices. Because essentially, if they're not represented, I feel like we're just talking over them. And yeah, I really think we should have the indigenous people come in and talk.
So yeah, I will follow up with that, Jada, Ms. Walker, by saying that Ms. Davis Delano suggested, and what has been done in some other communities in Hanover and Pentucket and Winchester, was to invite a panel of Native American speakers to speak, and to not just have one or two to engage in tokenism, right? And also to not necessarily have shortened time limits that we might have in a more public forum. So I'm wondering if perhaps maybe our first step might be to have an informational meeting where we can have some presentations from perhaps Julina, if she's willing to share some of her AP research, but also Mr. Kempton. And then maybe talk with Ms. Davis Delano too about inviting some Native speakers to speak with us. Would that be a good first step? What is the committee's thoughts on that? Mr. Chibo.
So there was a, so Julina's presentation, she can speak up and correct me if I'm wrong, was focused on racial bias in high school.
Okay,
and I think that certainly applies, you know, to our work as a whole.
Figured.
But we also had another student who did one specifically about the use of a native as a mascot. And so I could certainly reach out to Mr. Higgins and to that student and see if they'd be willing to. I think, you know, what a great learning opportunity that is for the student. And it really, again, you know, in an authentic way, kind of elevates the research that they had done and the presentation they put together, you know.
Yeah, I'm 100% for, back to Ms. Oliveira's comment about students sort of leading and driving these issues. So to the extent that we can get students and former students to give presentations, I think that's fabulous. So I guess, right, thinking about this in terms of discussion of our plans, would it be okay with the committee if I go ahead and start making try to figure out a date where we could have an informative meeting like this? We would record it, we'll post this. I'm just thinking that if we're bringing speakers in, we may have to be flexible about when they are available, as opposed to saying this is when our meeting date is, who can make it. So if it's okay with the committee, I think maybe our next step might be to make arrangements for that type of meeting, informative meeting for us, featuring some people talking about research and featuring some tribal leaders to talk a little bit about that as a first step in this process related to that. And I would work, if anybody wants to help me with that work, I would welcome that, but maybe that's our first step. Ms. Chamberlain, I see your hand up.
I'm feeling like maybe we should do a little work on our own before we have any of the Native Americans come in and speak with us. I don't know if it would be appropriate or if it's something we can do under open meeting law. There would be, sorry, my cat. If there would be a way for us to maybe share some resources with each other, like maybe just nothing that's going to take a super long time for anybody to read, not a whole book or anything like that, but maybe there are some videos or short articles or something that we could just educate ourselves a little bit, and then maybe have some of those other, like the students that you were talking about, come in and speak, just so that we raise our level of education more before we have any of the tribal leaders to come in. Does that
Yeah,
sound?
so that's a good point. I would say two things to that, Ms. Chamberlain. One, I have some resources that Ms. Davis Delano shared with us, and I can share that with you. But I also feel like, in terms of thinking about this in open meeting, this should be something we want to share with the community as well, right? To make available to the community. So let me think about that. Maybe I'm looking at Dr. Gifford. I might talk to maybe Mr. Galashaw about some way that we could set something up. Like I'm thinking something like a Google Doc or something like that, but that committee members could add stuff to, right? So we would be authors on that. Other people outside of the committee would not necessarily be authors, but they would be able to read and view the resources that we posted on there. So I think maybe creating that sort of resource page, not just for us, but for the entire community would be a good thing. So I think if we did it in that way, right, it would, one, be sharing of information because we wouldn't be discussing that information. And I don't think it would violate open meeting law, particularly if we made it available to the entire community, right? So I'll look into finding some solution that I can share with you that you all, I will start adding some of the stuff I have, but as you all sort of learn and find stuff, let's start building that up. Does that sound good to everyone? Okay, so I like that idea. So per Ms. Chamberlain's comment, then maybe our first step of the process is gathering information both on our own, and then maybe Mr. Chibo might get that student. I might ask Mr. Campbell to present to us. So we do some presentation about sort of the research on that. Step two then might be having a panel of tribal leaders talking to us about the issue. And then perhaps step three, that would be down the road, then we may be ready to talk about having a more public forum / comment about that. Does that seem about right to everyone? Okay, I see lots of head nodding. This is good. All right, we're doing good stuff. So I know it's been a long day for everyone. We've been here almost an hour. I think we have a path here that sounds like everyone's moving forward. But I don't think we want to set do we want to set our next meeting date? I'm thinking about this. Maybe we want to do this. It's the end of the school year, so it's a little crazy. So I'm hesitant to say, let's meet 2 weeks from now, because I think all of the administrators and teachers on here might like keel over and die if I said that. So I'm thinking maybe like 3 weeks from today, we could have that meeting. 3 weeks from today. So Bonnie's got a 3 up. That seems to be 3. Okay, good. So does that seem to be good? That would be, I'm trying to look at my calendar here.
I think that's like middle school graduation time.
It is. All right. So how about we'll do 4 weeks. We can't go shorter. Tuesdays seem to work. 6/22. Does that work for everyone? Okay. And so over the next week or so, I will get us technologically set up. We can add to this as we go. And then hopefully on the 22nd, Mr. Chibo, can you try to coordinate with the student who did that project? I will talk to Ms. Davis Delano and Mr. Kempton about giving us presentations. I will give you all one bit of bad news though. And maybe Dr. Gifford might have more information on this though. As we all know, Governor Baker is going to be suspending pandemic-related sort of provisions in the law, and it's not entirely clear what things are going to stay around. And by what things, I mean Zoom meetings. You know, I understand why it's great that we have school committee meetings that are public and open, you know, and everyone can come, but sometimes for things like this, it's really nice to be able to meet via Zoom. I do not know if we will be able to do that. I'm going to cross my fingers if we can. I think it might be nice to do our informational meeting, continue to do it through Zoom if we can. I can't promise that to you yet. That's correct, Dr. Gifford, right? We don't know if we'll be able to continue to do this.
Right, we're still checking, waiting for the official word.
Okay, so fingers crossed that we can continue to meet for Zoom. I'm in my like leggings, I'll tell you underneath, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
you guys seen that commercial with Leslie Jones where she says, "Oh, it's only the second date. The camera's up top." I'd love to be able to continue to meet with you all in my leggings, but that may not be the case. If it is, I think we should continue to meet on Zoom. I think that works better for everyone. If not, we'll figure out where we're going to meet and how we're going to arrange that. So with that, I will ask if anybody has any other questions, comments, concerns before we get started, before we all go. Okay, fabulous. So
Dr. Jenkins, I just want to thank the students for coming. As usual, they so represent the student body and they are always articulate. I've never been disappointed. I've always been impressed and enthused by the kiddos, if we call them, our young people.
Yeah,
They're wonderful.
Thank you very much. We appreciate having you guys here. I'll also say thank you to Ms. Oliveira for coming to do the presentation, and also thank you to all of you for coming, showing up to our meeting here on a night, to Mr. Tebow's point, after a long day's work. We're all tired, but this is important work, and I'm really thankful that you're all willing to show up and do that with us. That having been said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make that motion.
Kathleen Amaral.
Amaral has a motion. Mr. Tebow, are you seconding that
I
motion?
will, yes, I will second that.
Okay, and so now I technically have to do a roll call, the one downside of a Zoom meeting. So I'm going to vote yes. Shannon Jenkins, Ms. Amaral,
Yes.
Mr. Tebow,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes.
Yes.
If you're muted, a thumbs up too is good. We can also confirm that. Ms. Bloom,
Yes.
Ms. Chamberlain,
Yes.
Ms. Masari,
Yes.
Ms. Scott,
Yes.
Ms. Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Walker,
Yes.
and Ms. Pamphile.
Yes.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I will be sending you some emails hopefully soon, and we'll see you in a month. All right. Thank you.
Good night.
Night.
Right.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.